If he tries to speak out, they will take his tongue. If he tries to run, they will take his leg. As Ben's 9th grade class ended, he waved goodbye to his classmates who were being fetched by their parents. While he was a skinny, quite nerdy kid, he did have a lot of friends in the school. He was a promising and smart student that everyone got along with. He said take care to the ones riding school buses. He was going to walk home because he only lived 10 minutes away from the school. And on that day, his mom was at home, sick with colds. He had walked home countless times before, so this was absolutely no problem. His backpack weighed heavily with all the books and projects, so he walked fairly slowly. He stood in front of a stoplight, waiting for it to turn green, when a white van slowed down and pulled in behind him. It was broad daylight, so he was not concerned. He just looked ahead at the stoplight, not realizing that the van's door opened behind him, and out came 2 men. As the light turned green and he was about to walk, the men quickly snatched him. One man put his arms on his mouth and whispered that if he screamed, they will kill him. He was immediately put inside a van. He thrashed and struggled, but they were too strong for him. One of the men pulls out a syringe and injects him. Tears are running down his eyes into the man's hand that is still firmly on his mouth. Slowly, his eyes start to close as he falls into a deep sleep. Ben slowly opened his eyes and immediately grimaces in pain. Something was very wrong. He was still disoriented and a bit shocked. On the floor, he could see pools of blood and dirty liquid. Only a small ceiling light illuminated the table where he was lying down. He tried sitting up. It was very difficult at first. He tried to hold the table to get balanced and was shocked to see his right arm. It was just gone. There's a stump right below his elbow where his forearm used to be attached. It was covered in bloody bandage and is still wet with blood. Tears well up in his eyes, and he wails in terror and confusion as he realizes his arm has been amputated. He looked around him, and he is in a dark warehouse-like structure with barrels that look like cages with kids and adults in them. They look emaciated, like they have not eaten in weeks. The place itself is smelly, dirty, and cramped. From the shadows emerges a tall, imposing figure. He spoke in a deep, gravelly voice that sent shivers down Ben's spine. The man says that his name is Rod and explains exactly what is going on. He tells the poor boy that this is his new life now, until he dies. When his wounds fully heal, he will join the others on their daily rounds. They will go out the streets to beg. Rod warns that any attempt to escape will be terrible for him. If he tries to speak out, they will take his tongue. If he tries to run, they will take his leg. And indeed, Ben saw a slightly older boy in the cage, with one of his legs gone. Rod explains that amputees tend to earn much more because people sympathize with them. And so, if he ever tries anything funny, his life will be even worse. The more he misbehaves or tries to rebel, the more body parts he will lose. They put Ben into a tiny cage. He sits there, terrified. Now he was also quite hungry. He asks for some food and they tell him that they will have to deprive him of food for a few days because he still looked a bit too healthy. All night, he was kept in that tiny cage, scared and crying, thinking about his family. Their memories are the only thing keeping him strong. He knew he will escape from this place, but how? This is clearly a well-organized crime syndicate. It's not going to be easy. He spent 3 days in the cell, eating the most disgusting food he has ever eaten. Not speaking to anyone, scared that the threats of him getting even more hurt will come to fruition. Then the day comes for him to beg. They give him instructions that he will be with a small group of 5 people, 3 other teens and an elderly lady who would carry a baby around. Ben noticed that the baby was not reacting to anything. Ben realized that this is why he rarely ever sees the babies carried around by beggars crying. Clearly, this infant had been sedated. They are loaded into the back of a small truck at 2 in the morning. This is to make sure that no one can see them being transported into the city center, so the tourists and locals in cars won't realize that they are not independent beggars, but are controlled by this syndicate. Before the truck left, Rod warns them that if they don't reach the daily quota of $30, they will be beaten up. This is not the city where he was abducted. This was hundreds of miles away. When they arrive at an intersection, one of the gang henchmen go down the truck with them and hang out in the nearby parking lot. The gang member has put down a small chair where he watches them beg and makes sure that they are doing their job. And so, he begins his day, knocking on cars and begging. Some people initially ignore him, but when they see his missing arm, they take pity and give money in return. This evil, manipulative scheme works. It makes a good buck. He would work from early morning until late at night, taking breaks to only eat some disgusting lunch that the lookout serves them. For weeks and weeks, this was his life. Along the way, Ben's appearance changed. He looked skinnier, his eyes were sunken, and he couldn't remove the overwhelming sensation of sharp, phantom pains where his arm used to be. One day, while he was on the road working, he saw a pile of trash on the roadside. Sticking out of the trash is a small, half-used pencil. Eyeing the lookout, who seems to be busy chatting with some other guys, he quickly picks the pen up with his toes, grabs it, and puts it inside his shorts. He started hatching a dangerous plan in his mind. Over the course of the next few days, when some people would give him packed food like sandwiches, he would keep the paper and hide it in his shorts. Then at night, alone in his little cell, he pretends to sleep while sitting down. His eyes are partially open though, looking out for the moment when his captors are distracted. He does this very patiently. He starts writing on the small paper. He wrote how he needed help and instructions that would lead them to the place where they are being kept. He even drew a little map based on their journey in the truck. He wrote several copies of this over the next few days. While he was writing, he hears,
"What's that?"
He thought he was caught, but it was just another kid being delivered. This time, a late teen girl. They put her on the table and proceeded to get the saw. The dramatic buzzing sound as they cut parts of her makes him teary-eyed and strengthened his resolve to get away from this place. He finished writing on the last few sheets as the pencil finally runs out of lead. He hides it in his shorts. For the next few days, there was no real opportunity to ask anyone for help. But Ben is patient and determined. At night, alone in his cell, It is the memory of his parents keeping the fire in him burning. From the other side of his cell, he could see the new girl, absolutely mentally destroyed and traumatized by what was done to her. That same day, his chance would come, but not in the way he expected, but in a way that was horrifying. They were once again loaded into the truck, this time with a new girl. She is now being given the same instructions he was given. She didn't respond. She just looked zoned out, totally blank. They started begging in the morning. Ben was still holding on to the papers he made. He saw a nice minivan, and the woman gave him some candies to eat. He hands her the paper. Then, he sees the van drive ahead, hoping that she would read it. The window of the van opened, and out came the woman's hand and throws away the paper. Dejected and angered, Ben kept his emotions to himself. Then, he hears a crash, then screaming. The lookout stood from his place. He looked startled too. A small family car stopped in the middle of the road. In front of it, the new girl. The driver is horrified.
She ran into the car! She ran into the car!
A small crowd is now forming around the girl. The lookout runs towards the girl and tries to see if she is okay, but there is blood everywhere. Her body is limp and lifeless. Ben stood there, teary-eyed, but he snapped out of it. This is his chance. While the lookout was busy trying to save the girl, he hands several people his papers. Most of them just reject him and is disgusted that he is touching them. He was down to his last paper, and he gives it to a lady. The lady stares at him, confused. He mouths, "Please." Then, her reaction changed to one of understanding. She keeps the paper in her pocket just as the lookout calls to him and tells him to help. The truck ride home was horrible. Everyone was quiet. Even the usually boisterous gang members were angry that they lost the girl. She was not even human for them, just a lost investment. Ben looked at them with seething hate. Ben is once again alone in his cell, but now the cell in front of him is empty. He cried himself to sleep. Then, his sleep is interrupted. There is a loud knock. The sound of police sirens. The gang members stand up in panic. The police is trying to break down the door of the warehouse. Enraged, the lookout gets a gun.
Who did this?
No one was answering. The door is about to be broken down.
Who?
Then, his eyes go to Ben. It clicks in his head.
You did this!
He loads his gun and points it at Ben. He's getting ready to shoot him. A gunshot echoes throughout the warehouse, and the lookout bleeds from the neck. The police shot him. He falls to the ground. The gang members also try to open fire, but the police fires back. Kids in cages, covering their ears, scared of the gunshots. Finally, with some of the gang dead, the others simply surrender. In the police station, Ben sees the lady who helped him and gave her one big hug. He thanks her for her help. Then, he saw his parents. They look like they haven't slept in ages, and the family reunites once more. The other kids and victims also getting reunited with their families. A social worker sits down with Ben and offers him state-sponsored counseling. She gives him an offer to testify against the people who wronged him. She says that they are starting to uncover evidence of a large-scale syndicated human trafficking operation. They deal in forced begging, factory slavery, and organ harvesting. He can contribute greatly, not only in jailing his abusers, but also in possibly taking down this large syndicate. He and his family will be entered into the witness protection program if he accepts. Without even thinking about it for a minute, he agrees. These people will pay.